One of my students was asking me how I go about creating the low poly textures I use in some of my ships and some of my games. So I thought I'd do a quick tutorial on how to do that. Low poly texturing is a way of applying lots of flat colors to the different portions and faces of your models. You can pick out fairly significant details with them and create some really nice effects with only a handful of colors. And because the colors are flat shaded, you don't need it to be um, good at UV unwrapping. So this is a really nice method if you hate UV unwrapping and you want to get some really quick results without having to mess around in Substance Painter or create anything more complicated in Unreal. So let's start with what do you need to do some UV trickery and create these low poly textures. The first thing you'll want is a color palette. So for these particular models, I built them so that they looked like different ships from different manufacturers were supposed to go together, so they all used the same colors. And I did this by using this color palette that I designed for each of these ships. This is specific to my use case. I wanted the different ships to have different color palettes. Like here's these blue ships all use this specific color, the green ships use these colors only, and these orange ships they use these orange and red color palettes only. But you can do an entire project using only a single palette. What do I mean? Well, this is an example of a low poly color palette that I found online for free, and as you can see, it covers pretty much every color you might want, with the possible exception of black or some really dark grays. And you could use this one texture file to texture your entire project. So let's put that away and let's have a look at how you would do that. So I'm just going to add a cube into this project here and show you how in Blender I go about applying these low poly textures. So you're going to want to make sure up here at the top of the viewport you're not using viewport shading because you can't see the textures in viewport shading. Come over to the third option along here and use this materials shading, material preview, sorry, instead of the flat shading. Sorry, it's not called viewport shading. Don't use solid mode, use the material preview. So my cube here in material preview currently has a white preview material on it because I haven't assigned it any new material. So let's start with that here. I'm going to come down to so I'm going to switch to edit mode and I'm going to come to the materials section here with my cube selected, add a new material slot, and I'm going to assign it a new material. I'm just going to call this material low poly texture. And the only important thing in this material is the base color. We're just interested in putting flat colors on our model here. So you can change the metallic values, the roughness, etc. But for now, all I want to do is tweak this base color. And instead of choosing a color from this wheel here, like you would if you wanted to flood this model with any specific color, I'm going to click the little yellow dot next to it and assign it an image texture from the menu that will pop up here then. Now, you then need to tell Blender which image to use, so click the Open button here in the Details panel, and I'm going to find that texture file that I saved earlier. And here it is, the low poly texture map. When you open it up, things will start to look pretty funky indeed, because this low poly texture is being applied and projected onto the UVs for this cube without any tweaking or adjustments at all. So how does that look? If I come here to the UV editor, here is our cube in 3D space, and here is our cube laid out in 2D space on the UVs. And anywhere that these UVs are placed, the colors will show up. And that's what we're going to exploit. That's how we're going to use this. So if I want to change the color of the entire cube, I can just left click and select all of the UVs. I can then hit S to scale this and just scale it right down. And you can keep going. You can make this thing smaller than a single pixel on your sheet. And then when I press G to move these UVs, wherever I place them, the cube will change color. So if I place it here on this deep orange, I've now got this orange cube. Great, that's how you colour the entire thing. What if you want to colour a specific part of the mesh? Well, to do that, you're going to need to rejig the UVs. And I do this very simply and very lazily by selecting the individual faces that I want to change. So let's say I inset this face and extrude it inwards, and I want these faces here on the inside. If I wanted them to be a different colour, with the faces selected, just come to UV and select project from view. It will give you these UVs that under normal circumstances wouldn't be very usable over here in the UV editor, but I'm not interested in how good the UVs are. I'm only interested in where they are on this sheet. So if I grab that and put them here on these blue greys, if we come over here into the viewport and take a look at the cube now, those faces are all blue-grey, whilst the rest of the cube is red. What if I want to change this face here? I select it, UV, project from view, scale down the UV. Let's make this light. Let's go with green. And now we have 3 colours on this cube from our single material, all flat renders. As you can see, you don't need to be any good at UV unwrapping. All I do is select a face, tell it to project the UV, press S, scale down my UV, and then G to grab it and move it, and I just place the UVs on the colour that I want. And then that's it, that face will be that colour. And you can do quite a lot of really nice details with this method. If I just mess around for a second here and create something a bit more complicated, I can grab quite intricate patterns of faces, UV, project from view, scale them right down, and I'm not interested in what the UVs actually come out like. I'm only interested in where I put them. And that's all done by simply shaping the geometry and then adjusting the size of the UVs and placing them where you want. So model whatever it is you're going to model. Stick to your low poly art style, keep your face count as low as you can, but if you know that you're going to want specific colours in specific places, don't be afraid to make sure you've got a few faces and edges cut in to give you the shape that you want, because it will allow you to do some really interesting stuff with your textures later. And if you take this object and export it as an FBX, when you bring that into the Unreal Engine, it will contain this texture file with it. So setting up a material in Unreal is very easy because you've brought the texture map with you. Alright then, I hope that's helpful. Catch you next time.